Welcome back to another cinematography breakdown for our recent spec commercial called Her World. This is a jewelry editorial. This was in collaboration with Robyn, who owns Jupiter Hill Studio. You should book this on Peerspace in Toronto, as well as all the other wonderful crew members. They are linked down below in the credits. Feel free to go and hire them. They are amazing at what they do. If you don't know this by now, I've been challenging myself to one spec project every single month, and this revolves around commercial projects. My challenge with this spec project was to, number one, work with a new director. Number two, using new cinema glass that I have never used before just to test the character. And number three, using element filters. The problem when you are transitioning from videographer to cinematographer is you have a lot of these amazing ideas in your head, but you may not know how to actually execute them. And the role of a cinematographer is essentially to be that translator. So if someone comes to you with an idea, you should be the one to be able to technically translate that idea into gear, into camera movement, into lighting. The problem with spec projects obviously is that they are self-funded, and I get this question a lot: how are you actually funding these projects? And it's mainly because of all of the other paid jobs that I get. I'm taking a chunk of that obviously to pay for the expenses and to like live my life, but then I also save a bunch of money to go towards spec projects. I personally wanted to shoot for a 16:9 aspect ratio, and Robyn wanted 9:16. And so in order to do that, one of our first wide shots, I actually used AI. This was one of the first ever times that I have used AI. It was incredibly helpful, specifically because we were using foliage and real flowers and real plants. A lot of it was fake and a lot of it was real. When you do this kind of set design, it's very expensive. And if we had extended the set all the way to, let's say, a 10-foot by 10-foot scale, it would have cost a lot of money. I framed everything for vertical content 9:16. For some of those AI specific shots, I just made sure to stay static and locked off on a tripod. We had our margins on the Ninja Atomos to make sure that the 9:16 was safe in those margins. We also made sure that Robyn lived within those margins, because if you were anywhere outside of that, generative fill wouldn't have been able to fill the space without her moving. So this is the original shot. You can see it was clearly shot for vertical. This is now after generative fill, and Bridget, who was our editor, she's at Rooster Post House. She used Lightroom or Photoshop, I can't remember which one, but she was able to generative fill essentially the outside of the frame. And we also wanted to make Robyn a little bit smaller, so it made it seem like the world around her was a lot bigger than it actually was. Now this is after color and basically our final image. And we again used those light passes from the Lightbridge Go kit to slowly reveal any glimmer or shine that was like on her skin. I wanted to talk about all of the challenges that we faced with this spec project, as well as share all of the camera gear and lighting breakdown with you guys. Let's talk about pre-production. Well, me and Robyn have never worked together before because she comes from more of this creative direction side and I more so come from the commercial side. Some of the questions I was asking was, is this just purely creative editorial? Are we selling something? From there, we started a Milano board. Both of us were able to drop references in here that we've seen and we've wanted to recreate. Storyline-wise, we were working with something ethereal, fairy-like, feminine, very mysterious, very iridescent. There were lots of greens and like earth tones. That was kind of the look we were going for, and we pulled a lot of these colors from the reference images as well. Even within the shot list, some of these reference images have a lot of halation, and I know for a fact that Jordan, the wizard that she is, my colorist, would be able to add halation in post. It's also really cool to regain that control as the camera operator and as the DP, and that's where element filters come in, and we used Opaline Strength 1, and that is a combination between Glimmer Glass and Black Pro Mist. It retains contrast, but it still blooms your highlights and it makes your skin very soft and glowy looking. I was really excited to try more of an in-camera approach versus a post approach. We then established a shot list going from the widest shot and probably the most complicated shot with AI, and then moving into the close-ups. This video isn't sponsored or anything, but definitely feel free to go and check out Milanote. I have a link in the description below if you want to sign up. Now let's talk about gear and setup. I ended up prepping at Revolt Camera. This is in Toronto. I genuinely really love the look of DZO lenses. They're really sharp and they're really clean, and I wanted to experiment and see what kind of lenses out there give character. What kind of character do I like? How is the fall off? Like, there's all these words and technicalities involved with cinema glass that you don't normally talk about with photo lenses. I really wanted to experiment, and so Revolt had a set of these Genesis Gecko Cam lenses. They're the G35s and they have a wide range of focal lengths, and I think I only really used the 35 and the 50. During the prep day, I made sure to go and test all of the focal lengths regardless if I was going to use them or not, and I also tested the entire range of the aperture and the entire range of the focus ring, so you would go from all the way open to all the way closed, and same thing with the focus. I want to talk about why I actually only use the 50 and the 35, and mainly it's because of budget. When you think about sets like this where you are very heavy in set design and art department only has a specific amount of budget to work with, you want to make your world smaller. The area that's important for set design is only the area that your camera sees. There's no point in decorating more than that, especially for budget. It's mainly about how can you be efficient with the space, as well as choosing focal lengths that actually make sense for your set. We were also using the DJI transmission system. This was going from camera to my first AC, as well as providing another director's monitor. If you're liking this video so far, I would just love to ask you if you could like, share, comment, subscribe, whatever you need to do to let me know if you like this video or not, because I would love to keep doing them. Feel free to press the like button. Okay, thanks. Keep watching. Now let's talk about our lighting setup. So overhead on top of the foliage, we had the falconized light panel that was essentially lighting all of the foliage behind Robyn. We were also using the Lightbridge Go kit. This is a set of cine reflectors, and cine reflectors are something that allows you to diffuse light in a very controlled way. We were using the Aperture 600C and the spotlight mount in order to create a very directional light onto the panels themselves, and then just physically moving the panels across the frame. These panels also come in different diffusion strengths and sizes, so we were using the bigger diffusion in a higher strength, and then the smaller size diffusion in a lower strength. And by strength, I just mean the amount of coating that's on the mirror. So the higher the strength, basically the higher the coating, the more diffused your light is going to be, and something that is less strong will act more like a mirror. If you want to try this at home, honestly, just go and take an iPhone light and shine it against a mirror and see where the reflection bounces. That's essentially the same concept as these reflectors, but they're a lot more precise. It was a really interesting way to experiment with it because, you know, we're under no pressure. There isn't any expectation to create a very specific image because there was no client on set, and that's the beauty of spec work. Try to experiment with certain things, and that was kind of the whole goal of this day, was to experiment with the filters, experiment with the Lightbridge Go kit, and see even how those two interact, as well as these new cinema glass. So let's look at our very first shot. Again, this was done with AI, and I actually made it a point to ask our set designer to make sure she was okay that we enhanced it in post. The reason why I think that's important is because obviously when you are listing credits, she will be listed as someone who has done our set design. If it's enhanced in any way and it doesn't actually reflect her personal work, then there might be a problem. So I always wanted to, you know, make sure that if I am enhancing anything in any way where it's somebody else's work involved as well, that they're aware and that they're totally okay, and, you know, they have a stamp of approval on that. We also sprayed the foliage with water to give it a little bit more of a realistic rainforest look. And with those light passes in combination, it was kind of like mixing real elements into the set to make it really seem more realistic. I was lucky enough to have a bunch of people come out and help me. I had Garima, who was pulling focus for me. If you're working with cinema glass, these are all manual focus, and you definitely need somebody to help you pull focus, especially if you're handheld. It can get a little tricky if you're trying to do both at once. And if you have budget and if you have the capability to bring someone on like a first AC, I definitely would recommend it. That way, I'm mainly just focusing on camera movement and lighting, which is honestly the place that I want to work on the most. One thing I was realizing is that obviously as a DP, you usually either come up through lighting or you come up through camera. Because I am very much someone who has come up through camera, there's so much in lighting that I still really want to learn, and I'm so eager to do it. But I also know that there are DPs out there that will communicate in terminology that sounds more like, hey, can I have a soft source here? And in certain situations where the gaffer knows exactly how to do that and translate what I'm saying in a creative way into technical terms, that's amazing. That is their job. That's what they're there for. In order to, I guess, be a more well-rounded DP is to also understand that lighting language. And I think it's important to do both. Like, I don't think it's asking myself to do more than I should be doing. I think it's super important that I know camera and I know a lot of different gear and support systems that will allow me to move the camera in certain different ways. Even then, I still have to work on jibs and cranes. On the flip side, with lighting, that is something that I really wanted to focus on. So if there are things within camera department, like a first AC or like a camera operator, on spec projects specifically that I can delegate, I would love to do that every single time because it frees up my mental capacity and I can really focus on what I'm there to do, and that's to learn lighting better. I'm really happy with how this whole spec project turned out. Going back to the reason why we actually do spec projects, I would love to continue doing them and just make sure to focus on one or two things that I want to technically test out. I think the one thing that I didn't really grasp that much was the characteristics of these lenses. They do absolutely look beautiful, but it might have been worth it to take them outside and take them in different environments and settings and see like how they perform in low light, looking specifically for those characteristics and qualities. So I'm excited to explore that journey a little bit more. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the things because I would really like to keep posting these YouTube videos. If you like this, please let me know and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.